land is scarce and it becomes quite pricey as the density increases in some of these areas. I think it's a constant battle, right? Sometimes the client has a high risk appetite and they'll be like, look, let's just lock in the deal. I don't care about subject to finance. A lot of the times where you feel that client walks in and they'll be like, oh, I won the property yesterday and I'll sign pretty much anything, just give me something. And they've been listening to media and they're like, Jesus, the market is moving by like 30% every week. Can't just go guns blazing, trying to push the property down people's throat, right? Co-living properties can generate almost $140,000 in passive income and net of $40,000 in passive income after mortgage repayments, and they sit in an average yield of about 10%. Hello and welcome to another episode of HelpMeBuy Property Podcast. Today's episode is all about real life stories. And we promised you when we started season 3 that we will share a lot more of real life stories, the good, the bad, the ugly, straight from what I call it is the hothouse, or should I say it is the core organization of where all the magic happens. To discuss today some of these real life stories, I have one of my favorites, our senior property acquisition specialist, Maxine Hildebrand. I don't know if I'm saying her last name right, so I'm going to ask her. Drum roll, let's bring Maxine in. Maxine, how are you today?
Hey, Moss. Thanks for having me. I'm well, thank you.
Thank you for joining me today. Did I say your last name right?
Yeah, Hildebrand. Very close.
Right. Perfect. Very close. Very close. How are you today? Talk to people a bit about yourself, because I know a lot about you and I super enjoy working with you. But just for viewers and listeners, give a very quick sort of shout out as to who is Maxine.
Okay. Well, I have been in property for many decades. I actually just have always liked it. I bought my first investment property in my early 20s. And since then, it's just been a passion of mine, this real estate. And I've continued to buy investment properties over the years, done a few renovations. And then recently, in the last few years, we've got into development.
Amazing. And look, I think people are not born with this passion. The love of real estate grows on you, right? You start something small and then slowly and gradually. And you see that, that transition happening from you starting off as a first-time investor to striking crazy deals and building beautiful properties, right? So it's always a fun game.
Yeah. I mean, and then I also was thinking, well, I'm enjoying it and I know other people were enjoying it. I've been following you and I've seen, like, perhaps I can help your clients as well. So share our wisdom. And so, for the last almost year, I've been helping your clients to buy investment properties and grow their portfolios.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Oh, that's amazing. So talk to me a bit about the experience as an acquisition specialist, because you see a lot of people putting their hand up saying, hey, I want to become a buyer's agent or I want to become an acquisition specialist. Before we go down the path of stories, how has the experience been? It is fulfilling, I know that, but a general day-to-day stuff, give it a few liners.
Yeah, well, I mean, so people just think, oh, well, you just buy houses. And I'm like, well, no, not actually. Like, there's a lot of things to take into consideration. So firstly, you're dealing with like clients that perhaps have not had any experience with property, have never bought an investment property before. And some of the things you tend to think that are straightforward might not be, that they don't understand. So just learning individuals, what they know and what they can tolerate with risk, or what they can tolerate with building condition, or what they actually like and that sort of thing. So we'll tend to like start off getting to know them a little bit better, finding out what they want, and then starting communication with them and a bit of a relationship. And after a while, we actually talk, it's quite friendly. We become quite close as a relationship, and then we just go through the whole journey together, from finding them a property and presenting a property. And then once that's accepted, then we just go through the whole steps of getting it to settlement and making sure that their property is well prepared to take over by a property manager, and just, all set for their future.
Yeah. And I mean, you go through a lot of ruffle to find the diamond, right? It's not like you find the first property and this is it, right? It's just not easy, right?
No, that's right. Like, we might look at, like, before we even present the first property to a client, we might have looked at like 20, 30, sometimes even 30, 35, 40 properties before one comes along that suits their brief and that we're happy with. Like, any property that I present, I'd want to be able to say that I would buy it myself. So it does have to come, the criteria is quite high. And then sometimes the clients might not realize that. So they sort of think, oh, well, this is the first one, but we have to, this is the first one that's come up. That is amazing. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's a constant battle, right? I think our threshold or the filtering process is, we do tend to keep it through a really high filtering process. So the due diligence that goes through, and that massive list of due diligence of, taking in the slope and the frontages and where the services are, etc. Sometimes it's a journey for the client's perspective as well, that you have to educate them as well, right? So totally understand.
Yeah, that's right. Because they don't understand some of the things that we look at, just in terms of like the flood, or the level of, if it's at a bushfire, or the frontage, or just the size of the blocks, even small things like that. They don't sort of think in consideration, but we do.
Yeah, it's so fun. Like, I was literally speaking to a client just before this call today, and they bought a property with us, and they bought a property with another buyer's agent at the same time, right? And so they never disclosed it, and I'm not going to name names because he's going to come back and, buy the third property with us. But he was sharing his experience, right? And he's like, Moss, I bought an amazing property with you, and I bought a dot property with another buyer's agent. And I was like, okay. So can you share me, what did you buy, right? So they've basically got him to buy something at the peak of the peak in the market, in a regional town. But the first thing that I noticed as soon as he showed me the address, I was like, dude, there's a 4-meter slope on this property. He's like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah, there's like a 4-meter slope on this property. That's a massive slope. So no matter what sort of development potential there is, this is a 700 square meter land with a 4-meter slope. Like, you can't develop this in any way, shape, or form anyway. Like, so he's like, oh, I didn't even know that. And I was like, oh, how did that get passed through? Like, how did you miss that, right? So it's just little things, right, that that, that's important. But from a client's perspective, they might not even know that there are things like this which are quite relevant and important as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes it even extends to get insurance, checking the insurance and that sort of thing. So to make sure there's no surprises for them, and that, when they go to get that.
Yes. So there's a lot of hard yards. Having said that, let's jump right into the interesting bit, which is the good deals. I want to start with the good side rather than the bad side, because bad gets pretty ugly very quickly. So let's start with some good deals that we have acquired over the last sort of, say, 3 to 4 months. So talk to me a bit about some of these deals. And of course, you can share the address. You don't want to share the address, either of is fine. But let's start with the first one that you're super proud of.
Okay. All right. Well, I have a real soft spot for a splitter property, meaning that, the property is on 2 blocks with a title that's already there that just needs to be lifted off and would easily create 2 lots. So if I find one of those, I get super excited. So I was looking for a client in Townsville, in a suburb of Hyde Park, and happened to find one of these particular splitters, and it was off market as well, through an agent that I've dealt with before. And I was automatically like saying, I need to buy this for my client. So I got it together, presented it to the client. We ended up securing it. It was an 810 square meter splitter block, as I said. It had a 21 meter frontage, so you could, if you wanted to, split that easily, put 2 houses on it. We paid $493,000 for it. At comps at the time were in the mid 500s, and with the rental, it was about a 5.3% yield. And this was just in October, and I just had a valuation done on it just a week or so ago, and it came in, a desktop valuation came in at $548,000. So a ripper deal.
Don't get yourself taken on a ride by property spookers, so-called property investment advisors, or buyer's agents who are selling house and land packages or off-the-plan properties or apartments. Get yourself a copy of this book called The Millennial's Guide to Property Investing. This book is not just for millennials. The title suggests, but it's actually the most advanced way of investing in property. This book will relate to your clients, your colleagues, and other business owners. There are so many property spookers out there who have come out of the woodwork over the last 3 to 5 years, and there is so much misinformation out there that I had to write a book about all the F-ups that people can actually avoid in order to be super successful in the property investment journey. Some of these are really easy to identify, but they are so costly to fix once these mistakes are made. So it's a short book, it's easy to read, it has a lot of stories, it has a lot of examples, and it is a true guide for people who wants to do it themselves. My name is Moxin Reza. This is my story, and a lot of you will relate to parts of this story if you're not born in the riches and if you're trying to build a property portfolio that can last generations and help you improve your lifestyle along the way. So I give you a chance to come out there and have a read. Be kind, stay safe, keep smiling, keep investing, and please do check out the book. And it's a no-brainer, right? I think every time you're going to look at splitter blocks or, 2 titles on a single property, it's a no-brainer that you are getting 2 for the 1 deal, right? It's like every time I see them, I'll be like, well, I want to know what each block is selling for. And if I can buy 2 for the price of 1, or even like 2 for the price of even 1.3, I'm still saving that 70% of the money, right? So it's always a no-brainer, right? When you're talking about splitter deals.
Yes.
Client is stoked. I think, they were super stoked. Then a lot of the times, when you talk about yields, 5.3% yield right now in Hyde Park, is not the 5.3% today, right? Because the way the rents are going, this was basically locked in at that time. And so once the lease transfers over, this would probably be very close to 6%, right? So, from a client's perspective, it would become net positive quite quickly, right? So
amazing deal. Loved it.
Amazing deal. And what else? Talk to me a bit about, something else.
Okay, right. Well, we do look for all different types of things. One of the ones that literally just settled at the end of January was we had a client who was looking for a really high yielding property. So for that reason, we were trying to find a duplex pair because, to make the yield as high as possible. We actually ended up looking for quite a while for this client because we just couldn't find the right duplex pair, and they're not always available. Just whenever you want to get one. So we did end up finding one. Once again, this was in Townsville, another off-market deal. It was a solid block duplex pair, and at the time it was already yielding 6.3%. And so when he only just settled it, his rents are due to go up in like March and April this year, and it will increase to like a 7.2% yield. Yeah. So he was super happy because he really wanted a really good cash flow, and we managed to get that for him. Yeah.
And this client is an interesting one. I remember who you're talking about because when he first came in, he jumped in from another buyer's agent and he was super grumpy about missing out on so much growth because they made him wait for 6 to 8 months and not helping him find what he really wanted to. And he was really aggressive in his, buying strategy. But they promised the world, but they couldn't deliver, right? And so when he came in, I think he had all his guards up and he's like, get ready for another bad experience. Basically, that was the conversation I remember having with him.
Yeah.
And I remember having that conversation with him where I said, look, you can say no to every deal that we present to you, but know that, every deal that is going to be presented to you, we would have said no to at least 40 deals to present that first deal to you, right? So you need to understand that there's a lot of effort that goes in there. But you need to provide honest feedback as to why don't you like this deal? Because if you're not going to provide me feedback, how am I going to adjust my liking principle? Because you might have your own preference. I might like the deal because I'll buy it for myself, but you might have your own preferences, right? So that's always that case, right? And talk to me a bit about, we always look at something additional in the property, right? It's not always about, hey, this is just a buy and hold strategy. So what other stuff that you would normally look at, from a value add perspective when you're talking or buying properties for the clients?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I've got another example that I can actually let you know as an example of this. It was a property in Gladstone that we did purchase. It was actually it was maybe about 5 months ago. And this particular property was a 700 odd square meter property, but it was medium density. And so this particular house had there's a house at the front with quite a wide side access. So what we tend to look for, this property had dual sort of like advantages. You could have a secondary dwelling out the back. There was plenty of room for that with the side access and the house at the front. You could end up subdividing this with that back house or as well. As a duplex. And also because it was such a large block, medium density, you could have a development on there for possibly 3 or 4 townhouses, I'd say, on that size block. So
amazing.
Yes, we try to look for all those value adds add yield and add value to the property.
And the important thing is that, you might not want to develop this right now, right? But the idea is that land which is sitting at medium density or the land where you have better zonings available, that land is scarce and it becomes quite pricey as the density increases in some of these areas, right? We've seen this time and time again that you would see a developer knocking on the door, or you can do plans and permits and flip this to a developer because you don't have any intention of building this, right? So, it's amazing to have some of these strategies.
That's right. You better take up all those things. And just the setbacks as well. If you're looking to do something in the backyard, you can't do it too close to the fence. So that all has to come into consideration when you're planning those things. Yeah. Yeah.
I remember in one of the properties where I have a bit of a soft spot for Battlex properties because I feel that, they're the easiest ones, especially if they're on the corner, they're perfect, right? Where I remember a client had a Battlex and they bought it with another buyer's agent, and the buyer's agent didn't measure the side. And while it was a Battlex, but because there was no side entrance, well, technically you couldn't do much with it, right? And the house, if it's on stumps, you could potentially lift and move the house a bit, right, to create that side entrance. But this was on the slab. And so they knew that you couldn't be turned on a Battlex. And so when he first came in and talked to me, I said to him, have you considered buying like 0.5 meter to 1 meter of property from your neighbor? And he was like, okay, I never thought about it. And that's the path that he went down and ended up creating a Battlex for that, right? So a lot of people don't go down that path and, explore the opportunities of moving the house on the side to create that, space, or speaking to the neighbors and buying the, 50 or 500 to 100, 1,000 square meter entrance, from the side, from the clients as well. So,
yeah, exactly. Fabulous.
So some of the crazy strategies. We've talked a lot about the good. Let's talk about a bit of, should I say the deal going sideways or losing the deal, and how does that make you feel?
Well, it makes me feel I don't enjoy that part because, we've generally done a lot of, effort and love the property by the time we realize it's a good one. So to lose something like that is actually a bit devastating for the client and obviously for us because we've lost something that's potentially a gold mine. But one that happened recently, we were buying in Geelong and we negotiated the price and we'd come to an offer of like $445, which we believed was going to be accepted. So we had the contract signed by the buyers. It was actually really well renovated home, and it was renting for $500 a week. So the yield was quite high. It was over 5%, which, as we know, is like very high for Victoria. So I was super excited about this. But we had it signed. I waited for a few days. The agent was overseas. The vendor was overseas. So I was like, that's fine. And just it went out for another week or so. And then just underneath everything, another buyer came in and offers a cash offer, and we lost the deal. So it was literally signed by our buyers and we just lost it. And so I was pretty upset about that because those yielding properties are hard to find in that area.
And that's the thing, right? I think you would always have this conundrum, right? This dilemma of, frustration where what you call it is you are basically being price gazumped by someone else coming in, right? And, it has happened to me in the past, and I've done it to other people in the past. So it's a very dirty world out there when it comes to stealing deals from others or losing deals to other people, right?
But one particular one, I think it was end of last year, I had presented a property. It was a corner block, a nice one in Gracemead, Rockhampton, a corner block, the solid brick house. Thought this is amazing, had someone in mind, called this client, said, look, I've got something coming up. I'll have the report to you this afternoon. So I got that underway. It takes it a while to get the information to present to them. And then in that time, the agent got back to me, look, we've had so many offers this morning. The vendors is going to be taking one of these offers. And I'm like, and I didn't even have time. So it wasn't even about the price. There was no issue with hadn't even got to that point before I could get there. It was sold in the morning. So the speed
and it's also about making sure that you take the right amount of risk for the client, right? Sometimes, the client has a high risk appetite, and they'll be like, look, let's just lock in the deal. I don't care about subject to finance because I have my finances sorted. So I'll just go in and lock in the deal. And I don't have to worry about it, right?
Yeah.
But there are other times where, it's the first investment property and the client is a bit of a nervous one. And so that it's a good deal, but, you can't just go guns blazing trying to push the property down people's throat, right? So, there's this fine balance between the two where you're like, I know it's a good deal, but I can't keep running because I want to make sure that I've ticked all the boxes. And sometimes other people are not ticking the boxes and they might end up finding something. And yes, you might lose 1 out of 10 deals, but you're making sure that you're not picking 1 out of 10 bad deals as well, right? You're trying to keep all the bad deals away from your pack as well.
Yeah, that's right. With that one, I needed the time to go through all the due diligence and get everything ready. And so, but there just wasn't enough time. Obviously, people in the morning may not have done that and they just bought it to grab something, I suppose.
Yeah. And there is a lot of FOMO around this, right? A lot of the times where you feel that the client walks in and they'd be like, oh, I want the property yesterday and I'll sign pretty much anything. Just give me something. And they've been listening to media and they're like, Jesus, the market is moving by like 30% every week. And they have this sort of mentality and mindset, right? Where share a story. I know that you have a story where the client was pretty keen on going ahead with the property and you're like, nah, this is not it. And I want to not let you sign the property, right? Share that story.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I think the one you're talking about is the duplex that had all the issues. Is that the one?
Yes.
Yeah. So
for face value, it was an amazing deal, right? And I would have bought it, but
that's exactly right. When we first looked at it, it was an amazing deal. Another duplex pair in Gladstone, great yield. But we all signed up. When it came to the building and pest, there was just way too many red flags that came up. There was a lot of leaks in the roof leading to like a lot of mold inside, which had been concealed, in the cupboard, like in the cupboards. That's, areas that we couldn't really see without doing the walkthrough and the building and pests, which came up later. The retaining wall was half falling down. I mean, there was like just issues all over the place. So it was one of those ones where I said to the client, it's really not, we can't move forward with this. Obviously, they were like understanding in the end because there's too many red flags there to have. And so, but even a great deal, we just,
And people like, if a client was basically going down the path of doing it themselves, the real estate agent would have said, hey, these are all minor issues. That's not an issue. You just go ahead and buy something. But when you talk about a leaking roof and issues with the roof and structural problems with any of those or retaining walls, right? This can cost an arm and a leg and your, left kidney as well at the same time, right? Like it could be a super expensive exercise. It could cost you as much as 10% of the deposit of the house, right? In some of these, $450,000, $500,000 properties. So you need to be really mindful of what do you classify as renovations to add value or repair or someone else's repairs and maintenance that was never looked after. And all you're doing is just catching up on repairs and maintenance without adding any value to the property.
Yeah, that's right. And sometimes vendors will try to conceal some of these things too. And hopefully that they try and get it through, but we always find them. So
yes, definitely. And there's always a flip side to this, right? So you know that the deal is good, but the client is a nervous client and they're like, nah, I don't want to go ahead. And you're like, I know that this is a good deal. And I get a lot of those calls from you or Harrison or Luke all the time and be like, I know, Moss, this is a good deal. You can have a look and see. You've seen this before. Can you talk to the client and put some sense into them? So share a bit of that as well.
Oh gosh, well, a few stories there. I mean, it's okay. Let's start with just once they're the building a pest. So like obviously some of these houses are quite old. And so they're all going to have issues on some sort. I mean, we see common ones like, moisture in the bathroom, like the gutters might be a bit rust, these sorts of things. But because new time investors, they get a bit scared about this. And so we have to talk to them and explain exactly what it means and what the cost might be. And that even though these issues are there, the value of the home, the value of the property is still worth proceeding and just getting over these particular items. So yeah, that's one thing. And the other one, I guess, is also just people, with questions about a particular area, like, is it going to grow? Why is this going to grow? Like, is it already grown? Has it finished? Is it, all those sorts of questions. And that's generally where we bring you in, and for whatever reason, and then they're comfortable after that. So, yeah.
I think the important thing is that because they don't have an idea and understanding of how much a particular thing is going to cost, and they look at the building and pest inspection and be like, Jesus, like this is so wrong. And, everything is a red and nothing is a green, right? Whereas you need to very quickly identify what is a true red. And what is a red that can be fixed quite easily. Like when you talk about bathroom seals and grouting issues, they're not major issues. All you need is $500, $600 to regrout the toilets and the bathrooms, to bring the moisture level down, right? It's a very, very common problem that I would say probably like 60-70% of houses would have all across Australia. If you have a house which is more than 10 years old, there is more than likely chance that, your bathroom seals and, needs regrouting anyway, right? So, it's not a big deal. It's not a structural issue. High moisture readings, while it seems that, your house is falling down, it's not really the case, right?
People sometimes, I think they vision that there's like water coming out of the walls and that sort of thing, whereas sometimes it's literally could be just, the sealant. So a bit of water's going through there and, maintaining moisture in there, but it's usually an easy fix.
Yes, correct. I think it's more, they're not so much the structural issues, right? They're more of the cosmetic issues, and they're more like avoided repairs and maintenance that could cause into major issues if you don't attend it properly, right? If you let the moisture readings go for years and years, or a major moisture reading where there's a major leak could turn into a mold. And so that is, what you need to basically quickly balance out as to what is, repairs and maintenance versus a big structural issue or a big problem, in some of these properties.
Yeah. That's right.
What are the final golden words, Maxine, that you're going to tell to the viewers and listeners when they are out there in the field looking for deals?
Well, okay. All right. Well, I guess that, you talking about them when they're doing it on their own?
Or doing that on their own, or using some help, or having a team in place. Like, what is, like, say, 2 or 3 key things that you would say to them that, hey, you need to be careful of? 1, 2, 3.
Okay. All right. Well, you need to be careful of, flood is one of the big ones. You need to be careful that you're buying in an area that's, got growth or doesn't have growth, which you can, you'd find that that's quite a big one. You'd need to make sure that there's a low vacancy rate, and look at things like days on market to find the right area that you're looking in. Make sure the house is solid. Once you're building a pest, you'll find out if it's got structural issues. You've stopped pest issues, termites. But basically, I think at the end of the day is just be, open to looking at all areas, open to accepting a property that may not be perfect, because the outcome and the growth will be there. And it's just one of the, it'll all come together in the end.
And it's the ugly duckling rule, right? You don't have to think about living there. You are not the person living there. You need to make sure that would it tenant easily? Would the tenant be happily living there? Would it rent easily? And, could it rent for a very long time without causing you a lot of stress and anxiety, right? Basically, those are the questions. A lot of people, and I see a lot of investors typically, or first-time investors, they try to put themselves in the house and be like, oh, I wouldn't live here. I was like, you don't need to live here, right?
Yeah.
And so it's important to distance the emotion out when you're thinking about property investing purely from a growth and, building a portfolio perspective. And learn to depend on your, help, right? Whoever is there, helping you in the relationship, they're on your side. And so don't feel that, they're working against you. They're always on your side trying to protect your benefits and your rights. And then the last thing for me, which is the most important one, is there is always a deal out there. So never, ever, ever feel the fear of missing out, right? People tend to overreact and overpay and go into the markets and hot markets and, tend to pay $50,000, $60,000 because they feel that the market is disappearing. Yes, in certain cases, it is okay to pay a bit extra, whether it's a development deal or it's an amazing deal that is not going to come through. But, you don't need to feel the fear of missing out where, you would never be able to find another deal in your lifetime, right? There are deals happening across Australia. So just be mindful. And so, yeah.
That's very true. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Maxine, for turning up on the show today. Some really, really golden words that you've shared. Any final sayings for people who are listening to you? Where can they find you? How can they reach out to you?
All right. Well, thanks a lot for having me today, Moss. I have really enjoyed this. It's been good. So you can find us. We're Investor Partner Group. You can find us online and reach out. We're always happy to help you in any way we can find your property. But yeah, apart from that, enjoy the property journey, whatever situation you go. But yeah, we can help you at any time.
Thank you very much, Maxine. For viewers and listeners, if you have any stories to share, please do come out and share your stories, whether they're good, bad, or ugly. Thank you for listening to us today. Take care, stay safe, keep smiling, keep investing. This is Maxine and Moss checking out. Adios.
Bye-bye. Thank you.